want to once again extend the invitation that if you have any questions from what you hear today, please come and speak with one of us. Michael will be available for quite some time after the service. He's in no hurry to leave. He's here for you and to answer your questions. I will be around. You can reach one of us. We'll be happy to answer anything that you have. And if you have a need in your life and you need someone especially to pray with you or to think with you through that need or to counsel you on it, please let us know. We would be happy to spend some time. We may not know any answers, but we're a good listening ear. We're a compassionate heart, and we will pray with you to the Lord. The Lord has heard and answered our prayers more times than we can count, and we'd be happy to pray with you in exactly that same way. I want to thank everyone who came yesterday to help with the door hangings and those who were running around like, how did Trini describe it, like little tornadoes, getting the things hung on doors. Love the energy. Love the fact that 600 homes got an opportunity yesterday, a seed for the gospel. Pray for that seed, right? Pray that the Lord protects it and guards it, germinates it, and brings forth fruit from it. Is there anything else announcement-wise that I need to mention today? Then please give your undivided attention. Stand with me for the reading of the Word of God.
Good morning. Today's reading will be from Hebrews chapter 3 all the way through to chapter 4, verse 1. Wherefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our profession, Christ Jesus, who was faithful to him that appointed him, as also Moses was faithful in all his house. For this man was counted worthy of more glory than Moses, inasmuch as he who hath builded the house hath more honor than the house. For every house is builded by some man, but he that built all things is God. And Moses verily was faithful in all his house as a servant for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken after. But Christ as a son over his own house, whose house are we, if we hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm unto the end. Wherefore, as the Holy Ghost saith, today, if ye will hear his voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was grieved with that generation, and said, they do always err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. But exhort one another daily, while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. For we are made partakers of Christ, if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. While it is said today, if ye will hear his voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation. For some, when they had heard, did provoke. Howbeit not all that came out of Egypt by Moses. But with whom was he grieved 40 years? Was it not with them that had sinned, whose carcasses fell in the wilderness? And to whom sware he that they should not enter into his rest, but to them that believed not? So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. Let us therefore fear, lest a promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you very much. That was excellent. as was the music's today. I really liked that last song. I forgot I had the microphone on and they hadn't muted it. And I thought it was a miracle. There really is a lion in my lungs. I thought I should come down the aisle like little Yakety. Anyway, so we're on Hebrews. And I like the book of Hebrews a lot. It's one of the most sustained, or it is the most sustained Christological exposition in the Bible. It's just the entire book is about who Jesus is. That's what the whole book is about. There's no other book in the Bible that is that focused on that point. So it's really quite an astounding book. There's a lot of depth to it, and it has things to say that are somewhat, even at times, challenging for evangelicals. However, the point of Hebrews is really pretty simple. And it starts right at the beginning of the book, making the case. And the case he makes is that God has spoke to mankind through many, many ways over time. God is a God of speech. He created speech. And the psalmist says, God made the mouth. Don't you think he can speak? And it's a rhetorical question. Obviously, the answer is yes. If God made the mouth and he made the ability to speak, we should realize then, therefore, God can also speak. And he has spoken to mankind. In many ways, he says. In many ways. But in the last days, he has spoken unto us by the Son. Jesus is the ultimate expression of God's will. It's through Jesus that God has ultimately spoken to us. But Jesus is not just a mere messenger. And this is the point of Hebrews. Jesus is not just a mere messenger. Jesus is the very message itself. It's what John says. In the beginning was the Word. Jesus isn't just the Word speaker. He is the Word itself. Jesus isn't just bringing the message from God. He is the message of God. He is the very incarnate expression of God's will. And so that ties right into what John says, for instance. So Hebrews tells us that God had spoken many ways. He spoke by prophets. Tells us in Hebrews 1:1. He spoke through angels. Angels are messengers. He says, what are angels? They're messengers of God. That's what angels do. Angels carry God's messages to mankind. He spoke through Moses. He spoke through priests. He spoke through sacrifices. All of these ways God has communicated to mankind. He's communicated through these ways. But in these last days, he's spoken unto us by the Son. And so Hebrews goes through and makes a very strong and detailed case that Jesus is greater than all of these other messengers. He's greater than the prophets. He's greater than the angels. He's greater than Moses. He's greater than the priests. He's greater than the sacrifices. He's greater than the temple. Those are the main ones that Hebrews compares Jesus to. Now, when we say he's greater than these things, it's very easy for our minds to not truly or totally comprehend what he actually is saying here. Because when we think of greater, we think of something that is categorically the same, but better. So oftentimes, if you read that and you're not careful, your mind will think, well, Jesus is greater than Moses in the sense that they're the same thing, he's just better at it. Or he's greater than the angels in that they're similar, but Jesus is he's just a better angel. That would be like the Jehovah's Witness position. Jesus, he's just an angel, but he's a better angel. He's just a prophet. That would be the Muslim position. Islam, Jesus is a prophet. He's just a better prophet. But that's not what Hebrews is saying. Hebrews is not saying that it's like a Chevy and a Rolls Royce, right? A Rolls Royce is greater than a Chevy. But they both have four wheels and they both get you from point A to point B. They're both a vehicle. One's just greater than the other. That isn't what Hebrews is saying. Hebrews is saying Jesus is greater than Moses. He's greater than the temple. He's greater than the sacrifices in the way that your life is greater than a Chevy. In other words, it's in a category completely different. He's not being compared as if he's one of the same things, just better at it. It's saying Jesus is greater in that he is the Son, not an angel. He is the living temple, not one made out of goat skin. He's the house builder, and Moses is just the house. That's what was in the text, right? Moses was faithful in his house. Moses is part of the house of Israel. Moses is the house of Israel in some ways you can look at it. But Jesus, he's not the house. He's not a better house. He's the house designer. He's greater than Moses the way an architect is greater than the building that he draws on a piece of paper. That's how Jesus is greater in Hebrews. So we have to understand he is putting Jesus far, far up and above. And because of who Jesus is, we can come to know and understand God through him. And this is the brilliance of the doctrine of the Trinity. And it's not just Christians or evangelicals like us who understand this. I've told you before, there's an author I really like. His name is Harry Kimmelman. He wrote a series of detective novels called the Rabbi Small Novels. And what's interesting about those books, and if you can get them right now, they're on sale on Kindle and Audible for like $1 each one. And they're very, very highly interesting books, I think, and I would encourage you to get them. But one of the interesting thing about these Rabbi Small detective novels is he didn't intend for them to be novels or even detective stories. He wrote a book about Judaism, conservative Judaism, and how it works and what it's about and how it compares to other religions. And his publisher, because he was already an established novelist in a detective genre of a different books, but his novelist read the book and said, it's very interesting, but very dry. I suggest you spice it up. And so he made a detective, this Rabbi Small, be a detective solving murders in this little town in New Hampshire, and put that into this long treatise on the difference between Judaism and Christianity and other religions. So it's very, very interesting to me because it goes into a lot of detail about what Jews, at least today in the rabbinical sense, believe. This is one of the things that he writes in the book, dealing with the Trinity. He says, this is the Rabbi Small character speaking, he says, with us, however, faith in the Christian sense is almost meaningless. This is how a conservative Jew in America would think, probably, pretty typically. He says, faith in the Christian sense is almost meaningless, since God is by definition unknowable. What does it mean to say, I believe in what I don't know and can't know? Theoretically, Christianity has the same view of God, which is why his Son was born on earth and lived as a man. Because being a man, he could be known. Now, Kimmelman was not a Christian. He believed that Christianity had corrupted Judaism. But he did understand what the doctrine of the Trinity was really about. The whole point of Jesus coming to earth in flesh, being God himself, was so that we could know God. Because you cannot know God without Jesus. The Jews do not have what we call theology. They believe that's a waste of time. Theology is the study of God, but God is unknowable to them. Muslims as well believe Allah is unknowable. Because the only way you can know somebody is if you can meet them. And you can't meet God. You can't travel to him. You can't inhabit his category. You can't inhabit his presence, his space. You don't fit. The only way mankind could come to know God was if God traveled to us. if he came into our space. An example that C.S. Lewis gave, or I'm going to kind of use an example a little differently than he used it, but based on his example, C.S. Lewis explained it kind of this way. There is no character. For instance, using the same books I just mentioned, the Rabbi Small novels. Rabbi Small, the character in the book, cannot know Harry Kimmelman, the author. Rabbi Small lives on the surface of paper. And Harry Kimmelman is a real person living in a three-dimensional world. The only way Rabbi Small could know his creator, Harry Kimmelman, is if Harry Kimmelman were to somehow insert himself into the book. And that's what God has done in Jesus Christ. In Jesus, God has written himself into our book. Out of his real life sphere that he dwells in, what he calls eternity. He dwells in a place, it's not that it's far away, it's that you and I don't fit in it at all. Cannot fit in it at all. He came out of that glorious. It'd be like if you came out of your real life world and decided you were going to only live inside of a paper-thin novel. This is what God has done in Jesus. And that's why we can know God. And that's what Hebrews is telling us. We know God because he has spoken to us by the Son. Not spoken to us like talking, spoken to us like he is the Word itself. Jesus didn't come with a bunch of prophetic statements about God. He is God in your life. And when you know Jesus, you know God. Now, we got to be very careful as Christians that we understand this point, and we be very, very clear on this. We do not exalt Jesus by diminishing the Old Testament. This is a common pitfall in evangelical circles. Hebrews does not make Jesus greater by pulling Moses down. Hebrews does not make Jesus greater by diminishing the priests or by trashing the temple or the sacrifices or the law. It's the opposite. He exalts those things. How great the angels are. How great Moses is. How great the temple is. These are great things. Because if you have to trash them to make Jesus look better in comparison, well, then that means you're actually saying Jesus isn't that great. He could only look great if he's compared to the greatest losers. No, he says, no, let's compare Jesus to the greatest people. Moses, great, he says. Moses was amazing. Moses was great over all his house, faithful all the time. Moses is amazing. The law is amazing. The temple is amazing. These things are brilliant and amazing, and yet they pale in comparison to Jesus. So we don't have to trash the law to say that Jesus is great. What does Paul say about the law? The law is holy, just, and good. But Jesus is holier, more just, and more good. And not just more, like I said, incrementally, but he's more categorically. Jesus is not just more just an increment over the law. He is in a category apart. He is justice itself incarnate. He's a justice that not only is just, but makes just. How does Paul put it? He is both just and the justifier. See, the law is just, but not a justifier. Jesus is both just and a justifier. That's what Jesus is saying. I didn't come to destroy the law. I came to fulfill it. I came to fulfill it. So we need to understand that Jesus is not some tangent off of the Old Testament also. That's very important as well. That somehow Jesus is like this tangent line that shoots off of the Old Testament. That's not what it is. Jesus is the connecting of all the dots. You have the law, you have the angels, which is very important in the Old Testament. We won't get into that. You can look that up. But you have the angels, you have the law, you have the prophets, the priests, the temple, the sacrifice. You have all these elements, right? There are all these disconnected dots. And you look at them and you think, it's like, I don't know if you've ever done those. I'm sure you have, where you have that, they give you a piece of paper and it has all these dots. And you try to connect them in a way that reveals what it is. Where are all these dots? And if you connect them in the right order, in the right way, all of a sudden there's an elephant, or there's a butterfly, or whatever it is. Well, all of these elements of the Old Testament, they're the dots. Jesus is the connecting of all the dots. He is the actual image that comes out when you connect those dots. Now, Hebrews, so that's the framework of Hebrews. But Hebrews has a point it's making with that. And this is a very important and terrifying point. Hebrews might be one of the more terrifying books of the Bible, if you actually understand what it's saying. Christians have come to have a self-serving and unfounded conclusion that Jesus is cool, soft, tolerant, nice guy. Not just Christians. The whole Western world has this perception. And Christians have not helped with that. Right? Especially trashing the law. This doesn't help. It is very common for us as Christians to say or think, well, the law is very hard. The law is very strict. The law is very demanding. Thank God we have Jesus, who isn't strict or demanding or intolerant. I mean, I would hate to live under the law. They're stoning people, right? They're like it says in Hebrews, if they touch the mountain, if an animal gets close to that mountain, spear it, kill it. Oh, I would hate to live under the law. We read the law and go, oh, that was such a barbarous time, such a difficult, such a hard, demanding time. Now we're under grace. Grace is easy. The law is hard. None of that is true. That is, in fact, it's the exact opposite of the truth. Somebody has sold us Christian evangelicals a bill of goods on this. This is not true. And this is the point Hebrews is making. So why is he making this point in Hebrews? From what we can tell, and this is like you have to read between the lines because we don't have the backstory. We just have, it just breaks right into the message, and we don't have like a setup or a backstory. But if we read between the lines, what apparently has happened here is that Hebrew Christians who are Jews, they've made a profession of faith. And quite a while back, they've been Christians for a while. They are starting to have second thoughts. They're not sure. Should we continue on in this faith and this belief? Or should we go back to Judaism? Should we go back to temple sacrifice? Should we go back to keeping the dietary commandments? Should we go back to these things? Or should we continue on? They're not sure. And you think, well, how can they not be sure? Well, because these things are good. They've been given by God. The law is by God. The temple was commanded by God. The sacrifices were commanded by God. So they're sitting there thinking, we have two options. We could press on, believing in Christ, or we could go back. And Hebrews is written to tell them, you cannot go back. You cannot go back. For two reasons. The first is, there's nothing to go back to. Jesus put an end to those things. He fulfilled them. Think of the Old and the New Testaments as acts in a play. You're watching a play at a theater. And you see Act 1, and then Act 2 comes out, and you think, should I watch Act 2 or should I go back to Act 1? Well, you can't go back to Act 1. It's over. It played itself out. It isn't because it was no good. The reason why the Old Testament is no longer valid isn't because it wasn't good. It's because that act is already played out. Now we're in Act 2, building on Act 1. And that's what he's telling them. You are now in Act 2. There is no option to go back. In fact, he gives a cryptic prophecy, I think, that before long, all the accoutrements of Act 1, all the props, right, all the wardrobe, everything that had to do with Act 1 is going to be burnt to the ground, which is what happened in AD 70. The Romans army came in, burned the temple down, burned Jerusalem down. There's nothing left. You know why we have a Judaism today that looks nothing like the Judaism of the Old Testament? Because they don't have anything to do it with. They've had to try to come up with a substitute for the sacrifices. And you know what it is? Well, it's the keeping of all these laws. That becomes their temple. Their temple, which is no longer in existence, becomes the rabbinical tradition. Because it is all gone away. Even if a Jew today says, I want to go back to the original Judaism, he cannot. There is no priesthood. There are no sacrifices. There is no temple. And so all of these people, especially when they're not even ethnic Jews, pretending to be Jews, they can't even pretend to be Jews because there's nothing to go back to. And this is what, read Hebrews with that in mind. And this is what he's telling them. You don't have any choice but to look ahead. You need to press on. You can't stay there. You can't go back. There's nothing to go back to. Pretty soon it's going to be made abundantly clear when the whole system is going to be razed to the ground, and you're going to see only one thing remains. Jesus. That's all that's going to be left standing out of that whole first act. And the other reason is this, and this is the terrifying part. Jesus is stricter and more demanding than anything in the Old Testament. He says, remember when angels said something and if you disobeyed, what do you think? Let me ask you this. He asked them this. Let me ask you this. And let's say an angel were to come down to your house today. Let's put aside how you would know. Let's just say you knew. This was an angel of God. And an angel came down and told you to do something. Is that rain? Wow. So an angel came down and told you to do something. How serious would you think you should take that? Would you think that would be pretty, or would you think, well, that's optional? How about if Moses were to come to your house and tell you something? Would you take that pretty seriously? I think we probably would. I think if we were Jews and we were living in Israel and Moses came over and said, don't do that, I think we would not do that no more. Hebrews says, if you think the word of Moses was strict, if you think that the word of angels is demanding, what do you think the word of the Son of God is? Do you think Jesus is like more tolerant than angels? You think Jesus is like less demanding? You think what he demands of you, asks of you, tells you to do is more optional, less required? Christians think that. We think we're under grace. We don't have to really do anything. We're not under the law. We don't have to obey anything. We get to do whatever we want to do when we want to do it. We go where we want to go, when we want to go, show up late if we want to. It doesn't matter. It's Jesus. Now, if an angel were there, if Moses was going to be at church, well, then obviously you wouldn't want to miss, because Moses would just be like, okay, stone that guy. Oh, you're disobedient? Just stone him. You don't want to pay attention? Just get rid of them. But Jesus is cool. He's soft. He's nice. Hebrews is saying, no, you have misunderstood. Jesus is the very Son. Angels' words pale in comparison. Jesus is far more demanding, will require far more than Moses ever did. The commands of Christ are far more obliged or required than the law ever was. It's interesting. There was a thing called the Jesus Seminar a while back, decades ago. A bunch of scholars got together, mostly liberal scholars got together and dissected the Gospels and decided by vote which parts of the Gospels were actually the words of Jesus and which were mythology. And of course, very few, apparently, according to them, are the actual words of Jesus. It's very famous. If you read, you can look it up, the Jesus Seminar. What was interesting about it is they had like a motto, and it's an ironic motto because they didn't live by it. But their motto was, beware of finding a Jesus who is entirely congenial to you. Which in the end was exactly what they did, right? They went through the Gospels and found the Jesus that they thought looked like the real Jesus. And everything that didn't seem like the real Jesus, that got voted out. That got voted off the island. But they're right in their motto. We should be very careful. If the Jesus you follow sounds a lot like you can almost hear him speak in your voice, and he really dislikes the people you dislike, and he really likes the people you like, and he really approves of all the things you do, and he disapproves of everything your neighbor does, you are probably serving a false Jesus. A true Jesus probably is less happy with you than you would like to know. So what does Hebrews say? Hebrews says, what did angels do? Angels rained down fire from heaven. Prophets cursed the land with drought. Moses sentenced people to death. Now, that's what they did when their word was not taken heed to, when their word was not heeded. So the question Hebrews asks us is, what do you think the very Son of God is going to do if we don't take him seriously? We think, well, but aren't we under grace? That sounds a lot like the law. Grace should be easier. That is not true. Grace is not less strict than the law, it's more strict. Grace is God putting his will in our hearts, not just in our hands. That means that it's examining not just the things we do. One of the points that Harry Kimmelman makes in his books, and he makes this over and over and over, is that Jews do not like and agree with Jesus' Sermon on the Mount at all. I mean, they practically don't like any of it. And one of the things they really don't like is that Jesus said, if you look at a woman and lust after her, you've committed adultery with her in your heart. They don't like that. They don't agree with that. Jews believe that as long as you don't do it, it isn't sin. You are not responsible for your thoughts because the law does not police the mind. That's their reasoning. But what does grace do? Grace doesn't mitigate the law. It doesn't diminish it. It doesn't take away its strength. it multiplies it. It tells you everything that you shouldn't be doing, you shouldn't either be thinking it. You should not be killing your brother, therefore you should not be hating him. See, that's grace says you shouldn't hate. The law says you shouldn't kill. The law says you shouldn't commit adultery. Grace says you shouldn't lust. Jesus, grace, the New Testament, this isn't less than, it is greater than. And that's the whole point of Hebrews. Jesus is greater. Now, while Jesus is demanding, far more demanding than any prophet, than any pastor, than any law, far more demanding. If you don't know that, you don't know Jesus. While he is that demanding, as the song we sang said, he is a good and gracious king. All other potentates pale in comparison to Jesus for two reasons. One is the power of these petty dictators, whether they be religious or political or what other sort they are. It almost invariably requires you not to know them. The moment you get to know them, you realize they're not really that great. They like to keep their inner circle small. They want to keep the allure of the unknown, because as soon as you get to know whether they be a president or a king or a religious leader or a pastor, when you get close to them and you start looking at them very, very closely, you start considering them like it says in Hebrews. I mean, you start analyzing. You put them under a microscope. If you put me under a microscope, you'll never come here again. It doesn't have to be a very strong microscope. It can be just like a little bitty magnifying glass is all it would take. And you would find in my life so many things to object to. It's why we don't open up to people. Because we know we cannot withstand any level of scrutiny. And nobody can. We find out that these powerful men, powerful women, whether it be politically or religiously, wherever they're at, they got all this power. When you really get to looking at them, when you get close, all of a sudden you get all these tell-all books being written because, you know what, I got in close and I found out they're not that great after all. They have the appearance of all this power and all this control, all these preachers who talk like they're so holy. But as soon as you get into that inner circle, you get to know them, you find out they're not that holy at all. And none of them can withstand scrutiny. But Jesus is an open book. You know what our text says? Our text starts out, Hebrews 3:1. Now consider. The word he uses there means analyze, inspect, look closely in detail. Jesus is saying, peer as deep as you want into me. The deeper you look, the deeper I'll go. Consider. And throughout the book of Hebrews, we're told that the solution to doubt, the solution to faithlessness, is to look to Jesus. The solution to doubt in every other system, political or religious, is to not look. Look away. Don't think about it too much. Don't look too deep. You'll doubt the more, right? Just close your eyes and press on. Jesus says, no, that's not the solution in Christianity. The solution to all doubt in Christianity is look into Jesus deeper. The deeper you'll look, the more you'll be sure. Christians aren't mind-numbed zombies. We're the ones who've opened our eyes and accepted the invitation to look as deep as we possibly can into him. To search him, to investigate him, to put him under the microscope. remember one time, fella bought a ring for his, an engagement ring for his bride. And for a few years, they went into a jewelry shop and they wanted to get another one. And he says, well, let me look at your ring. And they show it to him. Oh, it's very shiny. And then the jeweler pulls out the little magnifying glass. And the groom starts to sweat. Because once you look at a diamond, I mean, a diamond looks amazing when on you like this, right? But if you ever want to offend someone, just have one of those in your pocket and pull it out and say, let's see what's really in there. Oh, look at all that garbage in there. Look at all those specks. Look at all those imperfections. Jesus is the flawless diamond, and he's saying, look as deep as you want. All you're going to find is more beauty, more holiness. But it's not just because he's so deep and beautiful, but because he's like a king like no other king. And this is what Hebrews is saying. Everyone else is demanding. Stalin was demanding. Presidents are demanding. The police, everyone demands. Everyone with power is demanding. Jesus is more demanding. More demanding. But what he demands, he does. So he demands you be obedient. But he was obedient. Hebrews 5:8 says Jesus was obedient. He demands that you be self-sacrificial. But he was self-sacrificial. He demands that you take up your cross. But he took up his cross. Everything that Jesus would demand of you, tell you, you must do, and with far more requirement, far more severity than any angel or prophet or priest or temple, far more, he did first. He does not demand anything of you that he has not done himself. Nothing. Not a single thing. And that he's not willing to give you the will and the power and to work alongside you and do it. So Jesus not only replaces everything in the Old Testament, and this is one of the key points of Hebrews. Jesus replaces everything. Why are the sacrifices in Hebrews, according to Hebrews, why are the sacrifices of the Old Testament, why can't they take away sin? Well, because the sacrifice is just a sacrifice. And the priest can't take away sins because the priest is just a priest. It's one is the priest, and the other thing's the sacrifice. The sacrifice is obviously unwilling. The priest is unable. And then if you had a priest that was a sacrifice, you still need a temple in which to do it, but then that's something else. And everything is divided up, and you got all these divisions, and all these things are individual things, and they all have to try to work together. And Hebrews says, over a big, long, extended argument, basically says, because of the division of all these things into unique and individual little pieces, none of them work. Jesus can do it because he's everything, all in one. He is the temple, he is the veil, he is the altar, he is the sacrifice, he is the priest, he's everything. He both offered the sacrifice and he was the sacrifice. He was the sacrifice and he was the altar upon which it was sacrificed. He is the veil that covers it. He is the temple that surrounds it. He's everything. And he is the God that receives it. This is what Paul says in shorthand. He's all and in all. He's everything. That's why it's effective. So Jesus replaces all of these things, but he does it better. He's the epitome of each of them, the ultimate expression of them, the perfect expression of all of them. He's both better, as in best, because he's efficacious. So this is what Hebrews is saying. So having considered him, this apostle and high priest of your profession, how demanding do you think he is? How much leeway do you think you actually have to live however you want to live? To talk however you want to talk, to act however you want to act, to go or come or do whatever it is you want to do? Or do you think maybe you should be a little more afraid? A little more fearful? There's a great line in the Chronicles of Narnia. I think it's in the first book. When, at the end of the book, Aslan, the lion, the Christ-like figure of the books, is leaving, and little Lucy sees her leave and says, well, why is he leaving? And the statement is, he's a nice lion, but he's not a tame lion. Or he's a good lion, but he's not a tame lion. There's another line where he tells the little girls, Lucy and Susan, to get on him and ride on him. And they're afraid that he might eat them. And they say, are you going to eat us? And he says, well, you can't know that, can you? He doesn't say he won't. So there's always this fear in the book. Even though they love him, they fear him. This is the New Testament. C.S. Lewis is basing this off of what he saw in the New Testament. Yes, we love Jesus. He's kind and loving and good. And he's also fearfully demanding. And you cannot throw one out to get the other. Just like diminishing Moses to exalt Jesus would be a huge mistake. Diminishing Jesus' demandingness in order to multiply or exalt his lovingness is a huge mistake. These things work together, and this is what Hebrews is telling us. We're going to pray, and then the musicians will come up and lead us in a final hymn. Father in heaven, forgive us for our laxness. Forgive us for taking you for granted. Forgive us for assuming that you are soft or optional. Lord, you're life itself. We need you more than we need the air we breathe or the food we eat. We praise you and worship you for your justice, for your righteousness, for your holiness. We're in awe of it, and we stand fearfully and we tremble when we look into you and see the depth of your beauty, the depth of your justice. Father, I ask that you would help us to restore a healthy and honest and correct sense of fear and love. And I ask all these things in the name of Jesus. Stand with us as we sing.